Hi, good morning. This is Dr. Frank Bejarano from Mariposa Community Health Center. I'm here with Susana Abreu, Perez Abreu, correct? Who's a licensed specialist with Mariposa Community Health Center. And we're here to discuss the month of April. It's Neuro Diversity Awareness Month. And it's something that we're pretty passionate about and something that we want to discuss with you to give you some insights of the things that we're able to actually do here locally and how to assist families. And also to present the downside of the things that are kind of limiting that we're working on to improve here shortly. So, Susana?
It's been hard, right?
Oh my
It's
God.
been a long road. You've been working on this for a long time.
We've been working on this for, I guess, well over 10 years,
Yeah.
maybe 11 years. And one of the problems that we have is that we actually started pretty strong. We had one time where we had one of the providers from Tucson who did ABA services. You want to explain what ABA services are?
Yeah, so ABA is a applied behavioral analysis, and basically, in very simple terms, it focuses on the behaviors of the children and modifications that can be made either at school or at home to get the children to function more in accordance with the environment that they're in.
Right. And one of the most important things about controlling behavior or improving behavior is consistency. And this is where we have a kind of a break, because we started well with ABA services coming from Tucson, and they were doing up to 40 hours in the home, which is fantastic, and it was covered by the Access services. And then slowly but surely it becomes that they did not have enough therapists for our community. In our community, we have a large number of people that are identified now, even more so with autism. Okay, so some of the things that we're interested in doing is trying to get these services back down to Nogales and working diligently with different agencies. There are some schools, and there's Intermountain is one of the other agencies that is located here in Nogales that also provides services. And they do have limited ABA services, but again, it's pretty limited in trying to get kids in there. It's pretty difficult because there's a waiting period, so.
Right.
So-
And a lot of the concerns that parents will come in with when they bring their children is their behavior specifically, right? And that's where ABA is very helpful, because you have someone who's helping you navigate the situation and then suggesting modifications. But it's also not the only option, right? And I think in our community, because sometimes the services are so limited, it's really important to consider the other end of the spectrum, right? Which is where the term neurodiversity comes in.
So just a little quick caveat. We're talking primarily right now about autism, but neurodiversity encompasses a lot of different other types of ailments that could occur. ADHD could be one of them. Even anxiety can become problematic for kids that are not able to function because of the high levels, right?
Correct.
And so with that in mind, we do have services at Mariposa that we can work with ADHD. We do have psychiatry available to us. But when it comes to autism, we don't have the specialists to diagnose a child with autism. And one of the things that we learned a long time ago, in order to get the full benefit of the services through either Altex or through DDD services, is they have to be diagnosed prior to 5 years old. A lot of times we don't get these children in until afterwards, so they're still able to get a lot of services, but it's a little bit more limited. Can you talk about the services that we can provide?
Yeah, sure. So at this time, Mariposa Behavioral Health is licensed to provide services for children 6 to 18, and of course adults. We do have four therapists, and all can work with either children individually or families. And we find that when talking about autism and neurodiversity, getting the most of the family involved is critical, right? And it's a good starting point, because a lot of challenges that we see are primarily like at school, and sometimes families just need help navigating the system. They don't necessarily know where to go or who to speak to, and that's where our support, I think, is the strongest, because we can, first of all, support them in just how stressful it is to navigate that, and then normalizing the situation, right? And saying, yep, this is a pretty common challenge down here, right? And then helping them find solutions. Sometimes, unfortunately, depending on the level of severity, it can mean, having to refer even to Green Valley, Tucson. But we try to provide as much support as possible in-house before they're sent anywhere.
Okay, you spoke about severity. Can you expand on the spectrum itself?
Sure. So at this moment in time, when a child gets diagnosed with autism, they'll fall within one of three levels: level 1, 2, and 3. It's not necessarily specific to symptomology, I guess is what I'll say, right? Because every child looks different. It's impossible to get like a set of specific symptoms and say that's autism and autism only. You might have a variation. The levels really, they're used to determine the level of services that they're going to need, the level of support. Level 1 being the least services necessary and least restrictive environment.
So you're looking at a higher functioning individual at that point, correct?
Correct. Very similar to the terminology used in the past, just different wording, I suppose. Yeah.
And then the next level?
Level 2 would be services that are necessary but are possibly like community based, right? You have a therapist or a speech therapist or an occupational therapist. A child may need some help at school, like with an IEP or a 504. And then level 3 is the most support necessary. Usually for level 3 is when DDD comes in and has their set of support for individuals with high needs. That's basically what it means, right? High needs.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we touch base on is that it's not only the child that has been affected by the diagnosis, and I'll say diagnosis at this point because it's varied, and it does take a specialist in order to do that. So we do refer out to Tucson. We have some agencies that we work with that are able to conduct the testing that is necessary in order to complete and be able to provide a diagnosis. That diagnosis is very important because that opens all the doors for other services that are needed. One of the things that you touched on, Susana, was case management. You didn't say case management, but that's what we're talking about. That's one of the areas of high importance because they're very supportive for the family, but in the sense of going to the school, attending the 504 or IEPs meetings, advocating for the services that the children do need, and then following through to make sure that those services are provided. And it's not that we're working against the school districts or anything like that. We're working with the school districts in order to finesse what the child is able to get for services and to get the maximum outcomes out of that. So case management is very important. We do provide quite a bit of that. We do have, 5 right now? Case managers are working diligently with that.
Correct.
And they're very versed as to the requirements for additional services at the schools. And they do guide the families through that. They walk them through. They help them fill out all the documentation as necessary sometimes, and also participate, like I said, in the meetings with the school personnel to come to a greater support program for them. Okay.
And I think one of the areas where I don't know that it's mentioned so much, in marketing paperwork, is the moral support piece, right? That
Right.
families really do need that. They need to know that they're not alone in it because it is very overwhelming. All of these processes that we're talking about, whether it's, dealing with DDD or dealing with the school itself or the district, is just overwhelming in general, right? Because there's a lot of meetings that have to take place. There's a lot of paperwork, and that can be a very taxing experience for families, at least from what I've seen. And our case managers are, that support in terms of being there for you when things get hard, right? Sometimes we'll get calls, just in distress of, I don't know what to do, or I'm very overwhelmed, I'm very stressed. And they are also trained to provide that, basic support in terms of mental health, right? Have you practiced self-care? Have you slept? Do you have enough to eat? Is everyone okay in the home? Are you healthy? Which is really, really important. We forget about that sometimes.
It's very important because once you have burnout for the provider, then the child is left stranded.
Correct.
So that's very important, and we always consider that not only for this, but for any other work that we're working with. Anyone who's a caregiver, we really try to help them, assist them to get the respite that they need.
Yes.
So respite is another word that we utilize quite a bit, or tool that we use, where somebody will come in and give the parent a break, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, or 4 hours, so that they're able to do the things that they need to do, take care of business, and also give them a break. That's why it's called respite, give them that breather that I can go somewhere, enjoy a cup of coffee, and not worry about having to be home right away. So
it's the classic airplane metaphor, right? Put your mask on first before you put someone else's mask on.
That's a great analogy. Now, DDD stands for the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and that's the department that really helps. And they also have case managers there. And so we don't work against each other, we work with each other to support each other. And we do have staffings with the provider and also the case managers when we have children that we are both seeing at the same time, to coordinate care but not duplicate it. Okay, because resources are limited, and we have to make sure that we're doing the best that we can. Is there anything else that you think we should bring up right now?
Yeah, I would love to speak about neurodiversity because that is part of the awareness of this month, right? In broad terms, neurodiversity is a general term that means brains are wired differently. It's this concept of individuals all being slightly different from each other. It is an important and critical piece of the autism discussion, although, like you said, it encompasses lots of disorders: ADHD, OCD, ODD. I mean, I've seen lists as expansive as including bipolar, schizophrenia, et cetera, right? With autism specifically, and ADHD, I'd like to kind of throw that in there too, because what's the statistic, like 40% of individuals with autism also have ADHD. There's a lot of overlap in symptoms, and where individuals have the greatest difficulty is in environments where there's a particular type of behavior that is required, right? I.e. school, right? You need to be sitting down, quiet, listening, doing the assignment this way, in general terms. And neurodiversity has introduced this idea that what if the environment were modified versus the individual, right? Because when we talk about ABA, applied behavioral analysis, we're looking at modifying the individual, right? We say this is the environment that this individual needs to function in, And in order to make this individual successful, we must change the individual. We must train the individual. But I think along the way, I happen to be one of those clinicians that feels like there's something not right about that, right? It feels kind of divisive or isolating, I think, because it introduces this idea that in broad terms, you don't fit. You're the puzzle piece that doesn't fit. And the reality is, technically, we don't all fit. Because there's no one human that is alike than the other, right? We all have, like our unique differences and idiosyncrasies that we do and whatnot. Even within similar conditions, like you and I, like we have ADHD tendencies, both of us, but we're very different, right? And you're more organized and I'm totally not.
But we suffer a lot, okay? We suffer a lot.
We do, but isn't it great when the environment is more inclusive, is more accepting of our differences, and it's suddenly okay to be you, and you don't feel singled out? And I think that's where the value is. A lot of the children I see with autism and ADHD, one of the primary struggles that they have beyond their behavior is their self-esteem. Just feeling absolutely horrible about yourself because you don't function in this environment and you need to function in this environment. And the idea behind neurodiversity is let's spread information, awareness, education to these environments where children will be in, and see if there can be minor modifications made that make the environment more inclusive. Within the classroom, that might mean that you have, fidgets available for a child to go and grab if they need to have some kind of like sensory stimulation, or you might have a variety of seating arrangements that might, make the child more comfortable. Like maybe the child wants to sit in a beanbag. I had my kid work standing up for some time, because he liked to do that. So I think it's just a really important and beautiful concept. And I think as a community, that's what I see happening, right? Is we're working really hard towards that.
Well, adapting and modifying what we do is one of the things that we have to look at. And you're right. There was a book that was written. I can't remember who the author is. He talks about hunters and farmers. Mm-hmm. Okay, and
Gabor Mate.
Yeah. Was it Gabor Mate who wrote that?
Isn't it? Because I feel like you've talked to me before about.
Well, because in the book, I'm not going to identify who because I can't remember.
Oh yeah.
But they talk about the ADHD as being the hunters of the world before. High energy, don't give up, very focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was the mission, like that. And then later on, the community developed and they became farmers. So now they weren't relying on the hunters, they were relying on the people who could actually have the patience and grow stuff and do that. And so you left this kind of group out there behind, and we still get them.
Right.
Okay. Montessori schools, if you look at the Montessori schools, hey man, go at your own pace. Mm-hmm. When I was at A.J. Mitchell in 5th grade, I had my instructor was Mr. Russell. Mm-hmm. And he would let us go at our own pace, which is good for the other kids. But for me, I was ADHD, and it takes me forever to read something 5, 6 times to comprehend it. And I'd go home, I'd tell my mom, I think I'm stupid. I don't know how to grasp things, And she was very patient with me and what have you. And Mr. Russell came up and eventually he says, no, when I say work at your own pace, doesn't mean you can't ask for help.
Right.
But that was the key for me, okay? Everybody else was finishing the work way ahead of me and stuff like that. But he guided me back. He says, you can always ask for help.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect example of how this becomes a way of thinking, right? Mm-hmm. Almost like a lifestyle, if you will. This idea that we're all different, and this idea that what works for you might not work for me. and I perceive this thing one way and this person perceives it another, and really who's right? Right? We have such an attachment to right and wrong. And you always talk about this, right? That like when we see couples, for example, this like there's this middle place where it's not right or wrong, it just is. And it applies even at home. How many times do we scold our children, for example, when they're not sitting down at the table? This happens, chronically when you have a child with ADHD. I know my kid never sits down.
Don't take him to church, okay?
Oh, you should see the amount of movement at church. And as a parent, sometimes you get nervous and you're like, stop moving. But what if it were okay for them to move? What if you allowed them to eat whatever you were eating standing, as long as they're sitting near the table? It's these changes in perspective that I think have the most value, and that's where I really see neurodiversity becoming critical to our communities. At this time, for example, we see a lot of movement with community-wide events. We have a couple of ladies who happen to be moms themselves, right, that have started up the Stimming Co. with this idea in mind.
And why did they start that up?
Because this constant battle, really, of confronting spaces that weren't inclusive, that didn't really fit, the needs of their children. And so it's this ongoing effort to educate the community, to include, businesses and include other professionals. And what does your space look like? Can your space be made more inclusive for neurodivergent individuals? Because we might think it's a minor thing to have, like I said, the fidgets. I always default to the fidgets, but we might think it's silly to make that a modification, but that might just make the difference between you being able to go sit down at the restaurant and have a meal with your child because they have access to that, than having to stay home because they're going to be, anxious or upset.
Can you define stimming?
Yes, stimming is a repetitive behavior that, in simple terms, soothes the person. And so it's any repetitive behavior. Sometimes, if you Google, you'll have examples. And so I think the myth is stimming only looks like flapping your hands around or doing something with your arms. But really, stimming can be even biting your hand is stimming, right? Or playing with your hair, ripping paper, chewing paper. It looks very different, but it usually is a form of self-soothing to calm, the nervous system, basically, when that individual feels overwhelmed or agitated.
And so that's only one of the many, many things that are going on with our children that are diagnosed, and with adults, okay? Mm-hmm. And so the sensitivity to noise and to texture, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So sensory sensitivities within neurodivergence are also very different from each other. There's no one way that this looks. There are some people that get very overwhelmed and stressed out by just lots of movement, right? Lots of people, lots of things, lots of different things going on. And that could be a sound thing, because let's just say I can't stand the sound of people talking and the train passing and the plates at the restaurant and everything that goes on, right?
So you get overstimulation.
You get overstimulation. It might mean I really dislike a particular kind of noise that I just can't stand. Or the sensory aspect, the tactile, would be like things that bother you if you touch them or they touch your skin. I always like to use the example of getting my socks wet. because it makes me want to rip my face off. I really dislike that. And when I describe this feeling of just desperation, the people I work with are like, yes, I know that feeling. And it just, you just can't stand it. Can't stand a tag. You can't stand, you know, the seams of your socks or your pants. Even some types of fabric are distressing. Yeah.
So I have very, very sensitive feet, okay? I cannot get a pedicure because I'll die. And I've tried it, okay? My wife likes to watch a show. It's called Naked and Afraid. When these people are walking it through the whatever, you know.
No.
And when they're walking, I can't stand it. You know, I can actually feel it. And so I think that's akin to what the kids are feeling because something is bothering them, and I just can't stand it. I can't even look at that program when I'm doing that. And I'm going like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, so it is so powerful that it becomes overwhelming that you really cannot function anymore because
You're
of
so
that
focused
that
on
focus.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I think that's what happens also. And mind you, we're not scientists, okay, and we're just talking from our experiences here. So that's the important things. So what we notice is that idiosyncrasies that do happen, okay, identify them, and then work with the families to say, how can we work with this, either to help them soothe. It could be the material of the T-shirt doesn't fit,
Right.
and they're always ripping their clothes off, or they don't want to wear shoes.
Right.
And we think, oh, they're not used to shoes.
Or
No,
they're
it's
throwing
like-
a tantrum or something, right? Or they want to control the situation. You know, and I always tell my parents, my intention is not to tell you what to do. You know your child best than anybody else. And you also know your home and your surroundings and your scheduling, your routine. But I think it's very valuable to teach parents this idea of stepping into their kids' shoes for just a second to live the experience. There's this like a migraine medication commercial. Well, I don't know if anyone watches cable anymore, but when cable existed, it was a mom that would put on like a sort of like a virtual reality thing. And then when she took it off, she was like, oh my God, you experience this like every day? Because it simulated a migraine. And that's exactly the idea behind stepping into your kiddo's shoes, right? Is what does the world look like and feel like at their angle? And something as simple as doing that and remembering that can make a huge difference in your ability to modify the routine or your ability to be more flexible. I was thinking last night, like, what's the one thing, right? What would you say is the one thing that a parent or a family of a neurodivergent child could do to support beyond talking to someone?
Beyond talking to someone. For me, trying to understand them, okay?
Correct.
And what I mean is, where are they coming from? What are they feeling? And how do they react? How would I react?
Correct.
Okay? And getting a parent to be able to say, okay, this is not something I want to be stressing about too much. Let them do it. Okay?
Yeah.
You know, when we had that group that we had at the theater, you know, and they had a movie for the children, and then they had the areas for play, and they were all sensory. Okay?
Yeah.
The movie theater, they turned up the lights a little bit so you actually see.
Yeah.
And they turned down the sound quite a bit so it wasn't overstimulating for the kids. And a lot of those kids were just running around in moving seats, and they were having such a great time, and nobody complained.
Correct.
Nobody corrected.
And you know what's one thing that I heard from like a couple of families that I just thought was so special? And I actually want to give a shout out to the two ladies, Victoria and Ashley, because they are very passionate about this. And it's a highly critical piece of the whole picture, right? Is to together as a community approach this topic. But a couple of families told me this is the first time that I've been able to come to the movies with my entire family. And that just touched me so deeply because I was like, you know, yeah, it's true. Sometimes some families can't go to the movies, or they can't go to a restaurant, or they can't go to Walmart as a family because their child gets overstimulated, or their child feels anxious around a lot of people, or the child doesn't like the sound or the look of the shopping cart or something, right? And it's a critical piece that I thought, when I was thinking of the answer to that question, I thought flexibility. It's a critical piece of being flexible. For me, that's the one thing that people can do, is introduce this idea to your life of flexibility, of the possibility that not everything is this or that.
Yeah. For me, I think that not taking your child to church and not taking your child to the movies and not taking those things because you're concerned about what other people are going to say, okay? For me, I said we can't base our what we do with our children based on that. We have to base it on their ability. If we don't expose them, then how are they going to get it? How are they going to know what they really like or don't like? Okay?
And that's true. I agree. I think for moms, that's a very relevant topic. That's another area that I love, is to work with moms, and in motherhood, I think that piece of like comparing yourself to someone else, or having the fear that you're going to be judged because your child is acting out, is really, really relevant. And I know I've experienced myself when my children are, either screaming or running amok, that I even look like, oh my God, who's staring at me? Like they're gonna think I'm such a bad mother. And then I'm a therapist and forget about it. It's, I feel even more scared. But, I really like to normalize the experience of parenting. Like, it's hard. It's all hard. And neurodivergent or not, it's all hard. It's all modifying life in one way or another. But neurodiversity does bring special challenges, and sometimes they're extremely difficult challenges that do require a lot of support, and do require a lot of like additional services. But no one should be feeling like me or my child do not fit in this world. That is the most important thing to me. And at Mariposa, we might not be able to solve all the problems. I know the families I work with, I tell them, I'm no expert by any means. And a lot of the stuff I learn, honestly, is through my own parenting and through educating myself as a therapist. But I'm not, certified in anything specific to autism. But I will help you as much as I can. And if I can't help, I will lead you in the direction of help.
And that's the important aspect of it, that we will provide the services that we can at Mariposa. We're not limited in the sense, because we do have 4 psychiatrists available to us, and like you said, 6 and up are the ages that we work with. Hopefully, in the future, we'll have a child specialist, that we can get a child psychiatrist that is a specialist in that.
And even 5 and down.
You're right.
I know we take the approach of, well, let's work with the parent. Right. Because the reality is, in most birth to 5 work, you do work with the parent, right? So even if we don't see the 5-year-old and under as the patient, we can definitely work with the parent when it comes to the parenting aspect.
And that's giving them the support,
correct,
the case management, and putting them in the right direction of where they need to go from.
Correct.
Okay? So the word here is that, we're willing to help, and we do have a background in certain areas that will be helpful in coordinating with the parents to provide the support that they need, and guiding the children to the correct agencies that can do the diagnosis and or provide the services. Unfortunately, like right now, those services are in Tucson or in Phoenix, but at least they're still there. Okay, once you get your foot in the door, then you'll see that you're not the only person that's stuck like this. And I think that's one of the parents that the issues that they have is that it's just happening to me. It's not, this is not normal. No, this is normal. What is it? 15 to 20% of kids are diagnosed with autism.
1 in 31 is the statistic. Okay, I know.
Every changes. Okay, my statistics are old, but 1 in 31. That's pretty high. That's very high. But the spectrum is so wide, and so we don't detect a lot of them.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, you know, a lot of those kids get a diagnosis of ADD. Or the other one, oppositional defiant disorder.
Yes.
I hate that diagnosis.
I know, me too.
And you know, I've told you.
I
that,
think
right?
all therapists
Yeah,
do.
so they're defiant because they're trying to grasp the world through their perspective.
And they're mad that no one understands them, or their environment doesn't connect with, it doesn't like sync with the way they function.
Yeah, I don't know how much time we have, but before we get to the point where we don't have time, you know, availability is here. You're not alone. Okay, for a crisis, call 988. They do have specialists that will talk to you and guide you to the right place. That's at night or on weekends or holidays or any time that you feel that you have a need. Our number is 520-375-5000. You can just ask the question. They'll get you to the right person and to get you scheduled in for whether it could be specialty services, integrated behavioral health, or even psychiatry. You know, definitely we get you into psychiatry or specialty. We will get you case management. That's part of the services. The only limitation we have is going to be the insurance sometimes because, you know,
Yes.
some of our providers don't qualify for those insurances, okay?
But in general, we do accept most commercial insurances. There's at least one of us who accepts it, and of course, Access. But like we said previously, if we can't provide it ourselves, we will lead people in the right direction, because I think that's one of our like core beliefs, right, in our behavioral health department is collaboration. And so it's really important that we all work together. Like, we all are here for the greater good of the children and families, and we all have the same goal in mind. And so even if you don't get it at Mariposa, you'll get it elsewhere, but help is out there.
Okay.
Is the most important.
And I like that we do work with the primary care providers, whether they're here at Mariposa or not. We still try to communicate with them because, again, they've already had the experience, that they've already been working with the family. We want to get the information that we can to utilize it to the benefit of the families, okay?
Yeah, and in terms of navigating services for neurodivergent children, having all of these players, if you will, collaborate with each other is really important. The PCP, the therapist, the case manager, the DDD case manager, the speech therapist, occupational therapist, because everybody plays a role in helping that specific family succeed.
Yeah. One of the things that they talk about with what causes autism, okay? And one of the things that's common is it's a variant gene that is developed, okay? But I also want to clarify that it's no one's fault. You know, it's not what you did or what have you. It's just sometimes it just happens. Okay.
And the reality is we don't have enough research any which way, right? Because there's a lot of theories and we don't have enough research in any one of those theories to say this is why autism is caused. And I always tell the parents, regardless of why and regardless of the diagnosis, this is your child and you want what's best for your child and you want them to succeed. And so let's just get to know your child, right? Let's just see what's difficult for them and then take it and run with that. And that usually is enough to at least have parents gain confidence in handling the situations that come up with their children, and then get them to advocate for themselves, which is another piece.
Well, that's the important piece, where
Right.
they're able to advocate for themselves,
Right.
you know, to ask for the services.
And on the topic of parenting, I am planning on having another workshop this month, at the end of the month, for specific to parenting, where we'll talk more in depth about neurodiversity and about the core competencies within neurodiversity, so that you feel more connected to your child and also more confident yourself in being able to manage whatever comes up for you in parenting your child. So look forward to that. I don't know the date just yet.
Well, keep on striving, keep on providing the services that we need.
Yeah.
And like we said, Mariposa Community Health Center is here to help you. We do have medical providers and pediatricians and our laboratories and our pharmacy. And the most important part for us is the behavioral health component, where we do have 4 therapists. One is online, that's 5 therapists. And we do provide online services for those people that are not able to come in. And that goes also for psychiatry and for specialty behavioral health.
Yeah.
We're here. If you need us, come on down, ask the questions. Doesn't cost you anything to ask a question, and you could get a lot out of it, okay? So I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
I don't. Just,
Well-
again, you're not alone, right?
You're not alone?
And if you are ever in crisis, there is a statewide crisis line that you can access at 988.
Correct.
And it doesn't mean you necessarily will get hospitalized, but you will get to talk to someone that is also always available to you.
And they'll speak to you in your language, okay?
Yes.
So thank you very much for hearing us out. I appreciate it, and hopefully we'll come back and we'll give you an update as to what's going on and working in diligently to get those services in. And,
Yep.
And just keep an eye out for the groups that are going to come out, and also for
Yes.
the 2 young ladies that are mothers who are working with their children and spreading their knowledge with everybody else.
Yes.
Some more events are coming up.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.